Hello, history buffs, time travelers, and scholars. Witches were never burned at Salem. Forget what you've seen in movies. During the Salem witch trials, no one was burned alive. Witches were hanged instead. Sure, it wasn't exactly a day at the spa, but at least it was quicker and didn't smell like a barbecue gone horribly wrong. The real crime? Everyone believing in witches in the first place. Plus, some of the accused weren't even women. Talk about equal opportunity and justice. Abraham Lincoln, the grappling great. Before he was making speeches and freeing slaves, Abraham Lincoln was busy pinning opponents in the wrestling ring. With over 300 matches to his name, Lincoln only lost once, a record that would make even modern wrestlers jealous. Known for his towering height and strength, he could trash talk too, reportedly telling one challenger, "I'm the big buck of this lick." His wrestling legacy earned him a spot in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in 1992. Honest Abe? More like Unbeatable Abe. The wooden box of punishment. In early 20th century Mongolia, crime had a tight consequence. Criminals could be locked in a small wooden box as punishment, often left to die from starvation. This cruel method of imprisonment was not only a harsh deterrent, but also a brutal reminder of how harsh justice could be. Imagine being stuck in a tiny box with no escape. Talk about a bad situation. It's safe to say this was a punishment that literally kept people on the straight and narrow. Post-mortem photography. A Victorian trend. In the Victorian era, a strange trend emerged: post-mortem photography. Families would photograph their deceased loved ones, often posing them as if they were still alive. These photos were meant to serve as a final memory, with the deceased arranged in lifelike positions, sometimes even with their eyes open. It might sound eerie today, but back then, it was a way for families to hold on to the memory of their loved ones, especially in an era when photography was still new. Talk about a long-lasting keepsake. Pie ban in England. Imagine a world without pie. In 1644, England banned all pies, declaring them the devil's pastry. Meat pies, fruit pies, even grandma's secret recipe. Gone. If you were caught munching on a slice, you might as well have been eating sin. Eventually, pies made their delicious comeback. But for a while, dessert must have felt like a crime. Could you imagine explaining this to your ancestors? No pie for you. The Secret Society of Pugs. In 1740, Roman Catholics in Bavaria started a quirky secret group called the Order of the Pug. This wasn't your typical society. Their mascot was a pug, symbolizing loyalty and trust. To join, new members had to wear dog collars, scratch at the door, and bark to be let in. Inside, members carried tiny pug statues and participated in strange ceremonies. While it might sound silly now, it was a serious group back then. Imagine explaining to your friends, it's all about loyalty and pretending to be a dog. The jockey who won after dying. In 1923, jockey Frank Hayes pulled off an unbelievable and rather spooky victory at Belmont Park in New York. Hayes suffered a heart attack mid-race, but his body stayed upright in the saddle, and his horse crossed the finish line for a surprise 20-1 win. It wasn't until after the race that anyone realized Hayes had died during the race. Talk about going out on top. His victory is still one of the most bizarre moments in horse racing history. If that's not dead determination, I don't know what is. Tanks that brewed tea. Since 1945, every British tank has come equipped with a surprising feature: a tea-making kit. Whether in the heat of battle or stationed on the front lines, British tank crews were never without their beloved cuppa. The tanks featured a special stove or kettle for brewing tea, ensuring soldiers could enjoy a warm drink during downtime. It's a tradition that shows just how serious the Brits are about their tea. Who knew you could wage war and sip tea at the same time? The ultimate blend of practicality and comfort? Prince Louis Rwagasore of Burundi. Prince Louis Rwagasore is remembered as a national hero in Burundi for his fearless resistance against Belgium's colonial rule. Elected prime minister in 1961, he had big dreams for his country, but was assassinated just 2 weeks later by political enemies. His bravery inspired the nation, leading to independence in 1962. Though his time was short, his name lives on as a symbol of courage and freedom. They should rename their national currency after this guy. The Kingdom of Karagwe. In 1963, the historic Kingdom of Karagwe in modern-day Tanzania was officially dissolved. For centuries, it was a cultural and political powerhouse, known for its ironworking and royal traditions. Sadly, progress had other plans, and the kingdom became a page in history books. At least they went out with a regal bang. Imagine if they had Instagram back then. Ironwork selfies would have been trending for sure. The unlikely Peace Prize nominees. In a bizarre twist of history, Hitler, Mussolini, and Stalin were all nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Yes, you read that right. These notorious dictators, responsible for some of the most brutal regimes of the 20th century, somehow ended up on the shortlist for the prestigious award. Hitler was nominated in 1939 before the full scope of his horrors was revealed. Mussolini was put forward in 1935, and Stalin was even considered in 1945. It's proof that the Nobel Peace Prize nomination process hasn't always been perfect. What a strange moment in history. Hitler and the Volkswagen Beetle. Yes, the man behind World War II also helped design one of the world's most iconic cars, the Volkswagen Beetle. Hitler wanted a people's car that was affordable and reliable. Little did he know, his design would become a hippie favorite decades later, plastered with peace signs and flower decals. Oh, the irony. From dictatorship to Woodstock, this little car truly traveled through history. Honey, I'm covered in flies. In ancient Egypt, keeping the pharaoh comfortable was a top priority, even if it meant making life miserable for others. Servants were smeared with honey to act as human fly traps, attracting pesky insects away from the ruler. While the pharaoh lounged in peace, these poor souls stood covered in sticky sweetness, probably rethinking their career choices. Imagine being the official fly magnet. Talk about a job that really stuck with you. It's proof that even in ancient times, some jobs were the absolute buzzkill. Qing Shi, the pirate queen, one of history's most successful pirates, wasn't some rugged sailor. It was a Chinese prostitute named Qing Shi. She rose from humble beginnings to command a massive fleet of over 1,500 ships and 80,000 sailors during the early 19th century. Her pirate empire, known as the Red Flag Fleet, was a force to be reckoned with, dominating the South China Sea. Qing Shi wasn't just a ruthless leader. She also set a strict code of conduct for her crew. Who says you need a sword to be a legendary pirate? Qing Shi ruled the waves with strategy and smarts. Commando, the heroic carrier pigeon. During World War II, a pigeon named Commando became a feathered legend. Tasked with carrying secret messages across dangerous enemy lines, he completed over 90 successful missions. For his bravery, Commando was awarded the Dickin Medal, basically the animal version of the Medal of Honor. Not bad for a bird whose day job was pooping on statues. Just imagine the pigeon parties. Hey, Commando, tell us about that time you outsmarted the Nazis. Fax machines and wagon wheels. Believe it or not, the first fax was sent in 1843, while folks were still bumping along the Oregon Trail in covered wagons. Samuel Morse may have been fiddling with telegraphs, but Scottish inventor Alexander Bain was already sending images over wires. While pioneers were busy dodging dysentery and hunting buffalo, Bain's invention was years ahead of its time. Imagine pausing your wagon journey to say, "Hold up, let me fax this map." It's like the Wild West got a sneak peek at the future. Leonid Brezhnev's legendary brows. Leonid Brezhnev, the fifth leader of the Soviet Union, is remembered for his policies and his eyebrows. These majestic caterpillars could have had their own postal code. Thick, bushy, and utterly hypnotizing, they overshadowed everything, including his speeches. People probably spent more time analyzing his brows than his political moves. Honestly, they might have been the original Russian Iron Curtain. Florida joins the Union. When Florida became the 27th U.S. state in 1845, no one could have predicted its future as the home of gators, theme parks, and the infamous Florida Man. From hurricanes to alligator wrestling, Florida has been keeping history colorful ever since. It's also the only place where you can go from beach paradise to swamp adventure in the same afternoon. Talk about versatile. Sir Wipers of the Royal Rear, King Henry VIII of England had a job for the brave, and slightly unlucky, the Groom of the Stool. This wasn't a fancy title for no reason. Their main duty? Assisting the king with his bathroom needs, including wiping his royal backside. Surprisingly, this wasn't considered gross, but an honor. These trusted individuals had close access to the king, which often gave them political influence. Henry VIII had 4 such grooms during his reign, and every one of them was knighted. 200,000 years of humans, 6,000 years of writing. Humans have been roaming the earth for over 200,000 years, but we've only been writing stuff down for the last 6,000. What were we doing before? Probably throwing rocks at each other, gossiping around campfires and wondering what that weird glowing thing in the sky was. Writing really upped our game, though. Hello, history books. Without it, this list would just be a series of grunts and gestures. Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was the OG upgrade your life moment. Machines replaced muscles, factories popped up everywhere, and progress hit fast forward. It wasn't all fun and games, though. Child labor and smoky cities made it rough. Still, it's the reason you're reading this on a gadget instead of carving it into a rock. Think of it as the era when we switched from being farmers to factory workers. And the world hasn't looked back. Jenga sales plummeted in 2001. In 2001, Jenga's falling tower theme hit a little too close to home after real-life tragedies struck. Sales tanked as people couldn't bear the sight of toppling blocks. The game eventually bounced back. But for a while, it was like playing Monopoly during a housing crash. Not fun. You've got to admire Jenga's comeback, though. Stacking blocks and living dangerously never goes out of style. Silk's sassy debut. Silk was first spun into clothing in ancient China around 3630 BC, instantly becoming the fabric of royalty and divas alike. It was smooth, shiny, and an absolute flex. Wearing silk was like saying, "I've got money and style." No wonder it became a global obsession. If Instagram existed back then, hashtag silk goals would have been trending nonstop. Stock market crash of 1929. The Great Depression kicked off in style with the stock market crash of 1929. The Dow Jones plummeted a jaw-dropping 89%, leaving everyone's wallets lighter than a helium balloon. It took 22 years to recover, proving that financial wounds take time to heal. Investors went from sipping champagne to selling pencils on street corners. Talk about a harsh reality check. The crash wasn't just an economic disaster. It was a lesson in what not to do with money. The man who survived 2 atomic bombs. Tsutomu Yamaguchi is one of the most incredible survivors in history. He was in Hiroshima when the first atomic bomb was dropped in 1945 and somehow survived the blast. After recovering, he traveled back home to Nagasaki, only to be caught in the blast of the second atomic bomb the very next day. Against all odds, he survived both bombings and lived to the age of 93. His story is one of resilience and sheer luck, proving that sometimes fate has a strange way of keeping you alive. Truly a man with 9 lives. Well, that's a wrap on these 25 outrageous history facts. Who knew history could be so wild, right? If you enjoyed this mind-blowing trip through time, don't forget to hit that like button. Unless you're a history purist who thinks this was all too weird. In that case, sorry, not sorry. Subscribe for more random tidbits, and ring the bell so you'll never miss out on more history that'll have you saying, "Wait, that really happened?"